Who's who of the Batman universe? Well, I think we got about all of them in this episode. How many did you find? Let's compare notes.
Half of Gotham is here tonight.
So today we're talking about the episode Nocturne from Batman the Caped Crusader. I've said it once, maybe I've said it twice, maybe I've said it a dozen times, but I'll say it again. I really love having Batman set in the 1940s. This is very much apparent in this episode, and I love that from an aesthetics point of view. I can't even say it, but I love it from just a look and design. I have always been a fan of the 40s. I just like that style, that design, like movies from that time period. I like just so many things, right? But also what that does with Batman, one, it gets back to his roots. I mean, he came out in 1939. So it really sort of ties back to the origins of Batman, where he's his truest form, I guess you could say. But also from a storytelling point of view, and this has nothing to do with Batman, sometimes there's so much more you can do with a story by creating limitations. And I hear this talked about in any sort of story writing, screenwriting, book writing kind of course. You want to put your characters in some sort of confinement, whatever that is. You know, even if you're doing sci-fi, you need some rules set around that, some structure so that there's limitations, because that's one of the problems with Superman, right? Is that he can do anything. He's faster than the speed of a bullet. He can fly. He's to pick up the world. He can throw whatever. So how do you defeat him? What's the constraint? Well, we have kryptonite. Well, now we got to find out clever ways of getting kryptonite in there. So even Batman as a character, he doesn't have superpowers. He's human. He has to sleep. He has to eat. He can get shot. He can get cut. He bleeds. He's got human emotions and connections to people and stuff like that. So all of that helps. What you get out of the 1940s, and I'm seeing even in movies them sort of doing this, is going back to doing timepieces and period stories, because even doing a modern day story, think about how limitless our lives are. I have every answer to any question I can ask right here on my phone. And I also have an iPad right here. All information is at my fingertips. I can leave on a road trip and head across the country with only my phone and be fine. I can call for help. I can order food. I can get money. I have money on my phone, you know, with the Apple Pay and that sort of thing. If I break down, I can call for help. You know, it's all there. My map, I know how to get there. Even just eliminating that, even just eliminating phones, that's a whole story device of like tracking people. I know where everybody's at any time because we have tracking on our phone, and I'm connected with my family of find friends and all that kind of stuff. Like,
Jason!
you know, air tags. Oh, I know where they're at. This story really showcases where just having it take place in the 40s limits the options of what can happen. It's cool. And specifically to this episode, the whole episode is at the carnival, which even that is sort of like a dated sort. There is still carnivals, just like there's still malls. I heard you when you said, why did I say there was no malls? But I mean, just in the stance of like, we don't go to the carnivals, and they certainly aren't as fun as they seem like they used to be in the 40s.
Now let me show you something really strange.
And then we go into this tent where we have Dr. Knight, which I had to look him up. I don't believe he's a pre-existing character. I think that's somebody who they brought up for the show. But that whole science show thing and mad scientist kind of act is kind of dated. Like, we as an audience wouldn't go into Carnival and be like, oh wow, how'd they do that? That's so magical. I think magicians have a hard time now because we see through so many things. And again, I think more than the big spectacle, I'm more amazed by just a sleight of hand card trick than I am like, oh wow, they made that battleship disappear. Not impressed.
Nah.
Not that I could do that, just that it just seems more technologically achievable with what we have than what it used to be. Whereas like this, that would have been amazing at that time to see that act of, oh, guy can't lift the weight, and then the girl comes out and then she can do that when she goes in the machine. Like, very cool stuff. So it creates this really fun aesthetic to all of it.
Always full of surprises.
But also great motivation in the story to like tell different stories. And I think that that's what's cool. It's like, I didn't grow up in the 40s, but I did watch a lot of older movies when I was a kid. My parents exposed me to that, and old sitcoms and shows from the 50s and 60s and that. And so I grew up with that. I don't think that younger audiences as much are familiar with that. When they talk about old classic TV, they're talking about the 90s, which still just kind of stings me right in the side right there.
Are you all right? Fine.
I think that doing a show like this and bringing some of the elements that I see in the show and go, oh yeah, that old trope, that's a classic backdrop to an episode, is new to a younger audience. And so I think we're hopefully, I would love to see this resurgence of these type of stories in the media. And I think that this is a great example of why to do that, because the main plot of this movie, this episode, would not exist if it took place today. What about us? Now, having said all that, one of the standout things in this episode is something that they've been doing throughout this whole series, is the way they introduce characters. Obviously, you're pulling from 80 years, 90 years, oh my gosh, almost 90 years of, wait, yeah, almost 90, 35, 85, whatever. Batman's been out for a long time. And so there's a lot of characters, thousands of characters that you can pull from it, and comic books and movies and TV shows, a lot to pull from, and obviously they can't fit it all in there. And I like that they're sort of doing this like reset where they're going, characters are different, we're utilizing them in different ways, but they're still throwing in some of these Easter eggs of utilizing characters here and there, and they're just sort of peppered throughout the series. Not all of them carry the same importance or value in the stories or in the run of the show as others, and I like that they're doing that. And it's sort of like sort of what they did in the comic books with the New 52, where it was like they just reset and they went, let's rebuild this from the ground up and forget everything that you knew about the show and the characters in the past, and here's the new iteration.
It's a strange case.
Case in point, this is a fun thing. They did this in Batman Gotham by Gaslight, which I did a review for, you can see up here, where they had all the Robins as the orphans. And in this, they did the same thing. We have Dickie and we have Jace, or Jason, obviously two of the more famous Robins, Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. But we also have Steffi Brown, if you remember, as Spoiler, who later became Robin and Batgirl. And then we also, later in the episode, which, by the way, before I get into this, there will be spoilers in this episode. If you have not seen the episode by now, please do come back, watch the episode. Just want to give you that boilerplate statement there.
We're gonna get in trouble.
But we also see Carrie later on, Carrie Kelly from the Batman Returns saga, and we've adapted her same look with the glasses, kind of shorter hair, redhead with the slingshot. A great little Easter egg. You don't need to know that she's from the comic books. You don't need to know that story of the Dark Knight Returns, but it's just a nice little thing for us. And again, sort of a reset to go, well, here she is, but she's not Robin.
I saved Batman!
Dick Grayson, who, by the way, his design looks straight out of the comic books from the 40s. He's called Dickie, so I'm assuming that means either he's going to come back later and become Robin as a kid, or we're not going to have Robin in the show. What about us? And either way, I'm kind of fine with that, because I'm really getting used to this sort of, okay, it's a new world, new thing, new stories. We're here to play.
Go have fun.
I know they struggle a lot with Robin specifically, with the whole child endangerment and, Bruce Wayne having Dick Grayson as a ward and taking him out and fighting crime and running around the streets at night. I get it. Again, it's sort of a fantasy idea. It's not to be taken literally.
I am not comfortable with this.
I think even at the time that had to have been weird. I mean, kid sidekick certainly was a thing of the era, but I don't feel like, people were watching that at the time going, gee, that's a good idea. We should have our kids out there fighting crime. But I get it. It's something that we can't quite do like we used to. And this is kind of a nice way of like working around that. Maybe we have the kids in there, they're kind of doing their own thing and kind of playing it that way. I think that that could be a universe that we could live in with Batman.
Look that way to you, Waylon?
Nope.
Now, aside from that, we do have Dr. Tompkins, who shows up, who's a very similar character, working with kids and has a relationship with Bruce Wayne because she worked with his father. So that's a nice little, like, we just kind of put her in there. She plays a bigger role in this story, but she was never sort of a focus of a lot of the other iterations, other stories. But it's nice that we kind of see her and they introduce her in this.
You should write a piece on Dr. Tompkins.
Another character that you probably saw was Killer Croc. We see him as part of the circus, which I think is a great tie-in, and they just call him Waylon. That's kind of a nice way of just planting him in this world. And again, it's that world building of going, oh yeah, okay, Killer Croc exists in this world, and we might see him later, we might not. He's there, he's part of the circus, which is his early story. That's fun.
Everyone likes a carnival.
And then we see Alfred reading The Gray Ghost. Comic book or story in the car when Bruce Wayne gets in. I love that. Obviously, Gray Ghost is one of my favorite characters or favorite stories from the animated series. So much good about that. But these little characters that just sort of exist in this world and we're kind of just peppering them, sprinkling throughout. Did I miss anybody? Let me know if you have somebody else on the list that you saw in this episode or referenced in this episode that I may have missed. I do think this one, I don't know if it's deliberate, but we saw one of the reporters that was talking to Bruce Wayne in the beginning very much looked like Lois Lane from the Max Fletcher cartoon, so that might have been a tie-in if you saw that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That's fun, and that's fun as a fan of the show and of the character. Certainly not the focus of the show to go, oh, I want to find all these characters, but it's kind of a fun thing of a way of the creators of the show, the writers of the show, to go, don't worry, we got you. We're with you here. You're in good hands. We're going to tell a good story, and we know who these characters are in this world.
He knows what's good for him.
And I think this episode also gets back to some of the roots of stories that I like about Batman, of being not directly a tragic villain. I mean, Natalia really has no remorse in sucking the life force out of these characters. And this sort of dips its toe in the supernatural realm. We don't really know where she got that ability or what caused this from her. But we do see a little heart at the end where she is saddened that she inadvertently killed her brother, Anton, and feels remorse for that at the very least. And then the Carrie character just calling her a monster. Well, she's bad. She's evil. Why would you want to save her? And I think it's a very touching moment to see Batman pick her up, put his cape over her to protect her from the sunlight, and carrying her out of there. That heart, that humanity of Batman, I like that we're accentuating that and him in the stories, in this series. I really enjoyed that.
There's something.
And again, we're seeing more of Harvey Dent, building him out, and Rupert Thorne, and we're building to something. And I can't wait to see where that goes and how they tie into that. That wasn't really the focus, but it certainly was an undertone of, like, Harvey Dent was having this whole carnival as the fundraiser, which was a great justification to have it set in a carnival. And then we introduced the characters throughout. And again, it's cool to see Killer Croc introduced at the carnival. Great aesthetic. And that one is really directly pulled from his roots from Batman the Animated Series. And you see my full review on the episode Sideshow from the animated series, where we learn more about Killer Croc and his time with the circus, which is fun. So be sure to check out that episode, and I will see you in the next episode.